Well, welcome back, everyone. Prepared Suburbanite here. First of all, thanks for all the great comments on my most recent video where I was talking about options for prepping in this new environment that we're trying to struggle through. One of the common questions that keeps popping up in the feed and from emails and stuff that I get is, what do you think's gonna happen? What's going to cause all this stuff to happen? So stick around. I've got a whole lot of thoughts about what's coming. So the bottom line for me is I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't expect that we'd be experiencing a pandemic and the effects of that pandemic, but what I did realize and what I did learn throughout this whole thing, and hope you see the same thing, is that there's a cascade effect. And that cascade effect is kind of like a fire. The sentinel event, whatever it happens to be, whether it's a pandemic like we're experiencing right now, or whether it's a natural disaster, a super volcano going off, something that's going to affect the entire country or the entire continent, that's the kind of a sentinel event that could happen. It could include an invasion by a hostile foreign force. That's also a real big possibility. But whatever the sentinel event is, which is the fuel for the fire, panic will ensue. And inside the panic, that's what you're going to find to be the oxygen and the accelerant for the fire that's going to take place. As we've seen with the current pandemic events and the cascade that began to happen currently, the panic is really the triggering event, and that's going to affect what I think is a stock market crash. Now, this pandemic was relatively mild to medium-sized. I don't think it was certainly as bad as the 1918 Spanish flu kind of a thing, where there was 50 million people that died over a short period of time. But the effect of this one has been relatively minor, and a lot of it has to do with the responses that we were all engaged in. Social distancing, wearing masks, isolating ourselves, that kind of stuff. But what did happen in this pandemic was a stock market crash. And while it was relatively mild, in mid-February, the Dow Jones was at 29,551. By mid-March, it had fallen to 18,592. That's almost an 11,000-point drop in the Dow, which is 37%. That was a crash. If that had continued, we would be in dire straits. The next thing panic can do after a sentinel event is cause bank runs. People are going to want to get their cash out of the bank. The banks are going to be closed. They will be. If there's such a huge demand to pull cash out of the savings accounts and checking accounts to deal with current situations, banks are going to respond by not being there. So there'll be a bank run, and then there'll be bank closures. There will be corporate closures and layoffs and bankruptcies, particularly in the manufacturing sectors, in wholesale, in retail, and in transportation, which cascades to the next drop down, is that we'll have supply chain disruptions. Now, we experienced some of that in late March, April, and through pretty much most of May, and it's only been the last couple of weeks or so that I've actually seen a little ray of sunshine in those supermarkets and wholesale clubs. The food shortages, yeah, they were there for real. And if there's no transportation, if that supply chain disintegrates, you got less than 3 days and all the supermarkets and wholesale clubs will be pretty much all cleaned out. So you're really 9 meals away from nothing. There won't be any way to do it. Fuel shortages. Fuel gets to the gas stations on trucks via transport. There will be rationing at first, but if there's no supply chain, there's no transportation to get the fuel to the pumps, yeah, it'll start with rationing, and it won't be long, and there won't be any left. So keep that in mind. The next thing that'll happen that the panic will cause will be the reaction of municipals and municipal services. Things like police and fire and 911 services. They'll be curtailed or discontinued because there just won't be anybody around to staff them up. There won't be any money coming in to pay the cops, to pay the firemen, to pay the first responders. So they're not going to have jobs. And if they just simply volunteer out of the goodness of their hearts, there's only going to be a few of them that do that. Municipal water supplies will be compromised, guaranteed. Takes power to run those things. The other municipal kind of a thing that most cities, towns, counties are involved in is the distribution of gas and electricity. Yeah, it's all subcontracted out to corporations and stuff like that, but those corporations are going to be the same ones that are hit by the stock market crash, the bank runs, the shortages and caused by a transportation shortage. So be prepared for municipal services being disrupted or discontinued. Things like trash pickup, even as simple as that. What are you going to do with your trash? The next thing that'll happen in the Cascade Effect will be access to health care. That'll be compromised. Nursing personnel, doctors, support workers, and all that. Hospitals aren't going to be able to afford to pay them. There'll be layoffs, there'll be access issues trying to get to a hospital, trying to get into a hospital, trying to get services. They'll get overwhelmed. And that was one of the leading causes, one of the leading factors that we were trying to guard against in the current pandemic situation. We wanted to spread it out so that the hospitals didn't get overwhelmed, and I think they were fairly successful in doing that. Crime will increase. Gangs will, based on panic, they'll start doing what they're doing in Minneapolis and a lot of other places. Yeah, they're trying to blame it all on the specific incidences that occurred during the Minneapolis police shooting and in Atlanta and all that. But yeah, the original protests, yeah, they were there. Right now, it's gone way beyond that. And so the gangs, and you can include whoever you want in those gangs, but the gangs will proliferate. They will start taking over. There will be insurrections. There will be riots, looting, and vandalism, just like we've seen in some of the other big cities around. Seattle is really trying to deal with it. I think it's going on right now in Washington, D.C., where they're trying to take over a section near the White House and call it some sort of autonomous zone. If you don't believe it, just watch the news, because it's there and it's happening now. Civil unrest, I guess that just kind of goes beyond the folks that have criminal intentions, but it's going to be your neighbors. It's going to be folks that live around the corner. they will be in a panic mode. They'll look around after a week or so, 2 weeks, and they're starting to run out of food. They're starting to run out of water. They're starting to run out of everything. And what are they going to start doing? There will be civil unrest. They will engage. Law-abiding citizens will engage in criminal activity for a matter of survival. It will happen, and that's part of the cascade that I'm concerned about. Martial law, I think that's sort of inevitable. If the governments stay actually in power, that they will invoke martial law. What form that's going to take, I don't know, but it will certainly entail the loss of our liberties and having our Constitution suspended. Simple as that. We won't have the same rights that we have now, the same privileges that we have now. It will be a whole different world. How it's going to come back, that's a matter of a lot of discussion in the future. I don't know what's going to happen, but for the present being, you need to be prepared. We all need to be prepared. You got to have food, you got to have water, you got to have shelter, and you got to have a means for self-defense. This is the Prepared Suburbanite, reminding you to be prepared always, and I'll see you all on the next video.